Hi and welcome to this video, and in this one we're going to be switching from angle mode to rate mode. So what we know about angle mode is that if we're flying and we bank and we let go the stick, it levels out for us. Now we made that very soft in the advanced drone setup. That's what this parameter here was for angle. If I turn this up, let me turn this back up to 50 so you can see what this parameter does. If I bank to the left now and let go of the stick, you can see it's really self-leveling really quite fast now. And what we did was we really softened that up in our advanced drone setup by changing it to 20, so that it gave us a really nice soft quad. Well, when we changed to rate mode, this whole self-leveling softness is all going to disappear because it's not going to self-level at all. So if I go back here and I press 3 on the keyboard, you'll see that it changes here to rate mode. Now in rate mode we don't have any stabilization, so if I take off, I'm going to go reasonably high to do this, and I bank the quad to the left and leave it there, you can see it's not self-stabilizing. I actually have to stabilize myself, and wherever I let go the stick, it's just going to stay there. Whatever angle I put the quad at, it's just going to stay there. It's not going to do any stabilization at all. Now what this means is that when I go into forward flight, I can't hold forward all the time anymore because it will just keep tilting forward. So one of the skills that we learned from angle mode, which was pushing forwards on the stick all the time to fly forwards, we now need to unlearn, because if you just keep pushing forward, it's just going to keep going and then you'll end up upside down and crashed. Instead, what we've got to learn to do now is to take the quad off, tip it forward slightly, and then let go of the stick. And now we're controlling our height purely on the throttle. I'm not actually touching. I'm going to have to touch the stick a little bit to go through these pylons. But you can see here I'm not actually touching the right stick at all, and I'm just controlling my height and what's going on the throttle. You can see I'm just flying along in a straight line, and I can just bounce the quad up and down above the ground, and I don't have to touch that right stick at all in order to keep going. I've just flown out of video transmitter range, so coming back again, I've got the quad tilted slightly forward and it just stays there for me, and I can control my height purely with the throttle, like so. So that's the difference. Of course, with it not actually self-stabilizing, you now have the ability, if I go up very high here, to just completely roll all the way around, and you can also roll all the way around like that and it won't stop you, it will let you do that. That's the way rate mode works. It doesn't give you any restrictions, it doesn't interfere with your control inputs at all. It expects you to completely fly the quad on your own. So with that in mind, what's different when we want to fly our course? Well, actually not very much. Other than not pushing forward on the stick all the time, flying the quad in rate mode is actually very similar. You take off, you nudge the quad forward to get it going, and then you use the throttle to control your height. So I'm actually not touching the right stick now, I'm literally just using the throttle. I've got to make a little bit of a turn to the right here to make this, and again I'm pushing both sticks together, and then here I'm pushing both sticks together to the left to make my turn, but I'm not pushing forward anymore. I don't need to push forward anymore because the quad is already tilted forward. That hasn't changed. It's not self-leveling anymore, so I don't have to correct and push the stick forward all the time anymore. I just have to move the sticks in exactly the same way as I did in angle mode, but without that constant pressure to tilt the quad forwards to fly forwards. And again I'm controlling my height mainly on the throttle. If I want to fly slower, then I just bring the angle of the quad back. I just tilt the quad back Keep tilting it back, tilting it back, tilting it back. You can see I'm slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, and then eventually I'm going to stop, and actually now I'm starting to fly backwards and into the pylon because I couldn't see where I was going. So that's the main difference with rate mode, is that you don't have that self-stabilization fighting your controls anymore. But the good thing about it is that when you start bringing your camera angle up to higher angles, to say 45 degrees, to fly a lot faster, like this, it's not fighting you anymore, and you just set your angle for flying, and you don't actually have to do too much on the right stick anymore for flying in straight lines. You set your height, and then you just use your throttle to control the height. You can see I can go really high on my throttle, and it's really not making, with a 45 degree camera angle, I could go very high on the throttle and it's really not climbing that much, it's just changing my forward speed. Okay, out of range again, let's go back. And that's another reason for wanting to get towards a higher camera angle, is it takes the height sensitivity away from the quad. See, I can go full throttle and it's really not having that much effect on my height. Now, flying through pylons, that's not that big of a deal because the pylons don't have a top to them. But if we are flying through a gate where you need to control your height, you need to be low to go through it, the last thing you want is a quad that's very, very height sensitive, so when you hit the throttle it climbs. So if your camera angle was down here where we started at 20 degrees, so let me show you this. If I fly forwards now and I give it full throttle, see how it's now extremely height sensitive, and it's climbed a huge amount compared to how it was when we had the camera at 45 degrees. So camera angle is again a very, very important part of learning how to fly the quad, because you need to set it at a level that you're able to control so you don't fly too quickly, because at 20 degrees you can really fly quite slowly, but you have got that height sensitivity. So you've got to be very careful with the throttle. But when you get to 45 degrees camera angle, you're now going to fly a lot faster because the quad's tilted forward a lot more. Oh, I've got that on a boundary now. So the quad's tilted forward a lot more, so you're flying a lot faster, but that height sensitivity is really gone. It's not height sensitive anymore, and that makes flying through small gates and low down gates much easier, because you haven't got to deal with, when you open the throttle, the fact that the quad skyrockets up into the sky. Okay, that's probably enough for this video talking about camera angle and rate mode.